and welcome to video 4 of expository graphics. Today we're going to talk about scales and like ways you can change the tick marks on your graph to make them better for people to understand. So for instance, if I'm going to use the sequence command. If I did sequence 1545, what does that give me? Well, that gives me the numbers starting at 15, incrementing by 5, going up to 40. So I'm going to use that to reset my y-axis. So my y-axis is continuous. It's a continuous variable. So I'm going to set the brakes on that to be that sequence. So now I get that sequence showing on my y-axis. Sometimes what I want to do is I don't want any tick marks on my anything down here on my x and y axis. In order to do that, I'm just going to set the labels to null. So if I do that, I set the labels to null. So that way, depending on what you're trying to describe, you may want to use one or more of these little tricks. Now there is a built-in data set called presidential. I could spell it. Hang on. Sorry about that. Let's try spelling it that way. Now, this is a table that's built in that's got presidents of the United States, the date they started in office, the date their office period ended, and what their party affiliation was, and it goes through Obama. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the president number to this. So I started with president number 34. Now I would like to graph these. So what have we done here? So what I've done is the y-axis, I've added that to my chart, and then I have the president number to my data set. Then I have plotted, and the x variable is going to be the start, and the start date is my x variable. My y variable is the ID or president number. And I'm adding geom segments where x end is the end date and y end is the ID. Okay, so that gives me the line that's going from each place. That gives me I had the geom point would be the start point. And then I'm adding the segment that goes to the end point. And then I'm setting the x to be scaled by dates without taking the null for the labels. So I'm not taking the label that was there, but I'm taking the breaks to be the start dates. So I only get a new label where there was a new president starting. And I'm giving the labels in the form of %y. And if you remember when we did Lubridate and we talked about date formats, the %y would give me the two-digit year format. So I'm going to use that to be my break marks here. We'll come back to this data set and graph and play with it a little more later on when we talk about colors. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is controlling where the legend is placed. So if I look at, I'm going to go back to my old MPG and look at the base graph that I had. Okay, so I've got the legend that's over here on the right, but I'm going to use themes to control where I place that. So I can use a theme to place the label on the left instead of the right, or I could place it at the bottom of the graph. Frequently, this is what I want to do to make more space for the actual graph itself on the width of my page, and put the legend at the bottom. So you could use left, bottom, right, or you could use none the legend is not on the graph. For this section, you're going to do the next exercise, which is to modify the breaks on either your X or Y axis of the graph that you have been playing with. So of your own data, modify either the X or Y axis breaks to be something different than what the default is that comes out of the system. In the next video, we will talk about using guides to control your legend a little more and overriding the default scale.